too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews, and welcome to another edition of Pints of View. Cheers to Mr. Ballman for the suggestion for the name. I will always give you a shout out whenever I do one of these videos. They come at random times when there's been some interesting comments. I'll just compile them all and comment on them all. Quick bit of news, I am supposed to be going to Bavaria in October. Not for the Oktoberfest, I hasten to add. It's just for my birthday. A couple of geezers I'm in the band with, it's their birthday as well, and one of them has a mate who lives in Bavaria in a place called Hof, I think it's called, and we are going to go out there and I am going to try some German beer. And if I get the chance, because there's going to be a lot going on there, we're only over there for a weekend, and if they allow us in the country, then I will give you a couple of beer reviews. I don't know what state I'm going to be in, but I will do my utmost, and if you don't hear anything, I'll do it when I come back. I'll give you a complete rundown of everything that I've done. But there you go. Anyway, before we get into the comments, I'm going to open one of these. This is the Kozel. I got it from Skunk Central, round the corner. This seems to be my go-to beer now. I haven't had a Budvar in a while, and I'm quite liking this stuff. I should go back to Budvar and see how this compares again, because I've been drinking this quite a lot, and it is rather nice considering the other stuff they've got around there. I went around there today, and that was the best one out of the lot, really. They had some Budvar, but as I say, I haven't been drinking that for a while, but I probably will. There you go. I've got a wedding on Sunday. That is where I have to wear the dreaded suit, and I am not looking forward to that. It was my missus's birthday today, and I forgot that as well. So yeah, I'm in the doghouse. She told me I've got to dye my beard for the wedding because I look too old, apparently. Oh, for fuck's sake! Anyone else you want to fucking destroy my confidence with? I did get her a present. Thank you, Morrison's, for that. I had a quick look around the beer aisle. Then I got her a card, and I got her a bunch of flowers, and I'm going to give her some money towards a tattoo. That's going to go into her tattoo fund. She's covered in tattoos as well, so the day is saved. But I digress. Without further ado, let's get a fucking mouthful of beer and let's dive into these comments.
It could be to radiation from a green bottle. That's why they should change them into brown bottles. No fucking logic behind it. That's what this is, or just a bad bark. Well, if it's radiation, then that also a bad bark. But you know what I mean. Trust me, I've drink Peroni many times. Lovely. I tried this one time. Absolutely disgusting.
Right, before you start laughing, I very much doubt that was the real Mike Tyson who made that comment. But there is a little bit of a method in his madness. When he talks about radiation in green bottles, there is actually a thing. Now, modern green bottles, I would very much doubt that they've got any radiation at all in them. But I think what he's referring to is what used to be called Vaseline glass, or depression glass, they called it. And it was around between the sort of 20s and the 50s. That's when it became very popular. And it does contain a very, very small amount of uranium, which, as you may or may not know, is radioactive. Now, you'd need a very, very sensitive Geiger counter to pick up any radiation in that. That's the official line. Whether, you know, there were higher amounts on it, but I'm sure you've seen them. If you've seen the old glass from the 20s and the 30s, it has a green tinge to it, and that's supposed to be clear glass, but it does have that green tinge, and some people find that quite desirable. You know, antiques dealers and stuff like that. It can create a nice sort of effect, but there is uranium in it, and as we all know, it's an undeniable fact that uranium is radioactive. So I doubt that's what's going into your Heineken bottles, and I doubt even further that is what is creating the skunky flavours that you get from beer that's in green bottles. But it's worth mentioning that certain green glass does have uranium in it, which, with a very, very sensitive Geiger counter, you could probably pick up very, very tiny amounts, almost negligible, of radiation. But there's radiation in the atmosphere. You get it from the sun. So you're going to fucking die anyway, so don't worry about it.
These beers are proof macro brew does not have to be trash.
That is a very good point, Fritz, me old mucker. That was borne out by a couple of beers that I've tried recently, and it tends to be AB InBev, believe it or not, and they tend to put fucking rice in their beer. Sorry, not rice, corn. Corn seems to be a thing with them now. But some of their beers actually don't taste bad. The Jupiler, as I mentioned on a few videos, it doesn't taste bad. And regardless of the price, I don't know how much it costs, but, well, I do know how much it costs. It's roughly about the same price as Stella in Belgium. I very rarely see it over here. If I do, then I've probably bought it from Beers of Europe or something like that. But it's not a bad Pilsner. It's a Belgian Pilsner. And believe me, when it's on keg, it is not bad at all. And I've drank it on several occasions when I've been over in Belgium. And believe it or not, when we did that bike tour over in, going through France and all that, we ended up in Belgium, and it was really hot. I mean, when you got all your bike leathers on and all that, and there is nothing, I won't say there is nothing, but there's nothing nicer than having a nice cold lager, and Jupiler really hit the spot that day, so I'm not knocking it at all.
What do you think of Super Bock from Portugal? Not seen you review it. I've seen that in Morrison's and it's all right in my opinion. Easy drinking, better than macro stuff, but not as good as the Munich.
Yeah, Super Bock, I do see that around in Morrison's quite a lot. It's normally in a big bottle, and for some reason, I don't know why, it's just never really appealed to me. I will do it now. Now that you've requested it, I will try and pick some up, but I think what's putting me off is why they've called it a Bock and they've called it Super Bock. Now, as you may or may not know, Bock is a German style of beer, and it's very nice. Believe it or not, Bock in Turkish means shit. I remember that from a kid. We had Turkish kids living up the road, and they taught me all the swear words, which you need to know. But they reminded me that Bock was a swear word in Turkish. It basically means shit. But Bock beer style is far from shit. But why the Portuguese have called theirs Super Bock, I don't know. But I did recently try the Sagres from Portugal, and it wasn't great, to be honest. And it's a beer from the Algarve, and it was one of them beers that was ran in Skunk Central, and it's owned by one of the macro brewers, so I thought I'd give it a go. But a lot of people have said to me that Super Bock isn't bad. Now, I assume that they're saying that, and I do see this a lot from people who go over to Spain and Portugal, and they rave about San Miguel and they rave about things like Super Bock and all that. Now, I'm not bundling in Super Bock into this yet because I haven't tried it, but the San Miguel that you get in Spain is obviously brewed in Spain, and it will be a little bit fresher, and it won't be brewed under contract, and there'll be certain conditions as well. It'll be ice cold, and yeah, it isn't the same beer that's brewed over here. Please stop associating it with its country of origin. 9 times out of 10, and I don't care what anybody says, it does not fucking taste the same. I don't care if they quote blindfold beer tests to me and all that. It's not the same. But there you go. That is just me. But yes, I will put Super Bock on the list, and I will hopefully be reviewing that presently.
Not for me at all, this. Probably the worst porter I've had, to be fair. We've a Titanic pub in my town, but I don't touch this stuff. My go-to would be Guinness, West Indies and Fuller's.
Yeah, the Titanic Plum Porter. I've tried that a few times, and it's drinkable, but it isn't, like you say, it's not really my go-to beer. Hang on one sec. I see it in Wetherspoons. Wetherspoons used to do it quite a bit, actually, in London. In, what was the name of the place? I can't remember. Pendarrell's Oak in Holborn. And yeah, I would drink it on occasion, just for a bit of a change, but it would be one, and then I would go back to drinking either Guinness or whatever guest ale they had on there, because I'm of the same opinion. It does. I mean, don't get me wrong. It smells quite nice. It has got that sweet sort of aroma to it, and one of them is just okay. I wouldn't even go that far. When I say one, I'm talking about a pint, probably about half a pint, and then you start thinking, wow, there's better beers out there, really, isn't there? But it's a popular beer, it's won awards, but it's not really for me. Now, you did mention the Guinness West Indies Porter. Now, that is a fucking cracking beer, and I've tried that on quite a few occasions. I've got it round the corner in Skunk Central now, and now and again, I do try that. I've got a mate who lives round the corner from me. Well, he's not a mate, he's related to me. What would he be? He's married to my missus' niece. So you work that out. I'm not into all this fucking working out who your cousins are and all that. But he's I wouldn't say he's an ardent Guinness drinker. He'll drink anything. But he does like a Guinness, and I got him onto that, and I said, this is going to be the best pint of Guinness you'll ever try, and he did agree with me. He said it was great. So, and it's 6.5%, so it's a bit hefty, so you've got to go easy on it. But yeah, it's one of my favourites as well. I do like Guinness West Indies Porter. That's a great one, and that's a very good shout. And when you're talking about Fullers as well, yeah, they do the Black Cab Stout is very, or the Black Cab Porter, I should say, very nice indeed. That is a good one. So yeah, there are some good ones out there. Better than the Titanic stuff, put it that way.
It's pronounced like the Eiffel Tower. It's a beautiful region of Germany. Heimbach is a lovely town to explore.
My German pronunciation. I got a message from my mate the other day. Well, I'll just send you exactly what he said. And he's from Germany. He's from East Germany, but he lives in West Germany now. And he sent me this message. He watches my beer reviews and all that. Norby, if you're watching, fuck you, pal. Yeah, that's what he sent me. So there you go. Yeah, my German is not great, but I do try my best. And I'm not as bad as some beer reviewers, because some of them, their pronunciation leaves a hell of a lot to be desired, and I will leave it there. And these are reviewers that have got quite a lot of subscribers. So if you're watching this, they're probably not. They probably I don't even register on the radar, which suits me fine. But if you are watching this, do a little bit of fucking homework. And I know I shouldn't be really, they say about people in glass houses and all that, but I do try my best, and I do ask people about the correct pronunciations, but they don't give a fuck. They really don't. And it would wind me up if I was German or if I was Belgian and I had someone murdering it. And I'm very grateful for all these corrections on the pronunciation. I will take it on board as well. But yeah, some people just don't care, and I think that's just ignorant personally, but that's just my opinion. And you know what they say about opinions? They're like arseholes. Everyone's got one, but sometimes you just don't want to hear it.
I want a beer named Wine Fucking Annoys Me.
Don't we all, mate? That would be a capital idea. Now, any craft brewers watching, I'm not keen on your stuff, but that's a great name for a beer. So, in the words of that fucking twat, what's his name? I can't remember, the bald fella from Star Trek. What's his fucking name? Don't know. Can't remember. But make it so.
Hi mate, agree with you on your lager opinions. I would only grab Kronbacher, Warsteiner and Stella Unfiltered. But there is one more little gem. The Marks & Spencer Czech Pilsner is also very good. Brown bottle, and it's brewed in Bohemia.
Mr. Ronald, how you doing, guys? Always appreciate your comments, and I agree with you on the Czech Pilsner. Now, I did actually review that on the channel, and it doesn't really fulfil what, in my opinion, is a Czech Pilsner. I found it a little bit too sweet to be classed as a Pilsner, but it wasn't a bad lager. And you may or may not know if you watched that review, it's brewed by the Bohemia Regent Brewery, contract brewed by the Bohemia Regent Brewery, which do quite a lot of beers that are available over here. The House of Trembling Madness carry their stuff as well, and I've reviewed quite a few of them on the channel, and they're not bad. I have to say, I've had some great ones from them. Their semi-dark lager, I think, is the best one that they've done. I think it's a superb beer. Now, you can compare it to beers like this, Kozel and stuff like that. 1 second. And they're probably actually better. So, yeah, that is not a bad shout. But just don't, if you're going to buy that Marks & Spencer's Czech Pilsner, just don't think that you're going to get a genuine Czech Pilsner. In my opinion, it's been sweetened for the English market, because, believe it or not, a lot of English people, or I wouldn't say English people, British people, they really don't like the bitterness on that lager. And I remember when Budvar came out, a lot of people complained that that was too bitter as well. And that's the Sarts hops that are in it. So Sarts hops will give you that nice spicy bitterness. I wouldn't say it's an acquired taste. It's how Pilsners should take. But what annoys me about these people that say that, they'll go over to Czech Republic or Prague, or Prague, in Prague or somewhere like that, and they'll drink Czech beer and they'll say, oh, it's the next best thing to slice bread and stuff like that. And I just think, well, you won't drink it over here. Why are you drinking the Czech Republic? I wouldn't say it's the same stuff, but it's virtually the same stuff, unless of course they're drinking Staropramen or shit that's been brewed under license over here. But I digress and I rant.
Remember first going to the marquee on Waldorf Street when I was 15. Saw Lords of the New Church and got served a pint. A big deal for a 15-year-old. A lot of the punters, punks, stroke goths were talking to us, gave us respect because we were only 15. The marquee moved to Charing Cross Road, but it was never the same.
The old marquee in Waldorf Street. Got some I had some very fond memories of that place. It was a great venue when it was in Waldorf Street. Very, very small, very dark, very smelly, and you've got to remember this was the 80s, and there were some characters that used to go there. My first ever gig, now you say you was 15 when you went there, I think I would have been 13, it was 1984. No, I would have been 12. And it was New Model Army, and I was a skinhead at the time, and one of my mates and his brother was a lot older, and he was going with his bird, and to me they seemed grown up. They was only about 17 or 18, and they drove down there, and we ended up in the marquee, and I was a 13-year-old, and I got served a pint as well. I don't even think they cared there. It was just whatever went, and I remember seeing New Model Army, and I wasn't really a fan of that. I was more into the Oi stuff, but it was great. It was my first live band, and I was just blown away how loud it was. And yeah, shortly after, picked up a guitar, and I wouldn't say New Model Army influenced me. I was always destined to pick up a guitar, I think. But yeah, fond memories of that. And I do remember when it went to Charing Cross Road, and yeah, it wasn't the same. They used to have when I first started seeing my ex-missus in the early 90s, again, I was still a skinhead then, and I remember going in there, and it was at the era of Britpop and all that, and I stood out like a sore thumb. But when you're young and all that, and I was in my 20s then, what would I have been? I would have been about 24. Yeah, roughly about 24 then. And just fucking caning the beer, not really giving a shit about hangovers and stuff. And yeah, it was great times. Sadly, never to be repeated. And of course, that's gone now. That is a Wetherspoons. And two other great places on Charing Cross Road alone. And I always say it, I keep these two books here, and I know I've mentioned it before, but it really boils my piss. These are all live music venues, and this is why London was the capital for live music, and why so many great bands came from London. That will never happen again. You know why? Because all these venues, and each venue has got a page. If you're interested in what these books are, London's Lost Music Venues, well worth getting. But each venue has a page. No, sorry, 2 pages. And these are all the ones that have closed down. It's fucking tragic. It is fucking tragic, but there you go, times move on, they say, and progress isn't always progression. Sometimes it's regression. And when it comes to music venues in London, I mean, there still are some. I'm not painting a doom and gloom picture on it, and I'm grateful for that. But from what it used to be, it's a shadow of its former self, and that's tragic. And yeah, I hate talking about it. It don't make me emotional, but well, it does a bit, I suppose, because I remember what it was like, and you try to explain it to people and who never experienced it, and they'll just never understand. But there you go, not their fault.
I tend to avoid anything in a 30ml can with primary colours unless it's cheap. A bit like you and green bottles. They seem to be all craft beers and taste the same. Currently, I have a Felton's 3 for £5 from Tesco, along with Franciscana wheat beer 4 for £6. I do watch your channel quite often, and have only recently started leaving comments. I've tried a lot of the beers you have reviewed and agree with most of them. I'm not into stout or Rauch beer though. I too play guitar, but now it's mostly bass I play now. Usually a Tanglewood, Ernie Ball, Stingray bass I've done some work on. Have you ever tried a modelling guitar like a Line 6 Variax? I have a 300 Variax guitar and the Variax bass too, which has a Moog setting. With the guitar, you get a complete editing system where you can choose everything from the body shape, the wood, the pickups, their position on the body, the combinations of electric and acoustic. Everything can be tried and uploaded to the guitar, including different tunings. Just make sure you can hear the guitar acoustically, as it can confuse you. Thanks for the links to the food reviews. That post got long quickly.
Line 6 and the Variax stuff. Do you know what? I actually remember when the Variax guitar came out, and I thought it was a great idea. And I don't know, I quickly went off the idea when I remember thinking, well, it looks a bit complicated to me. And back then, you got to remember, technology was, I wouldn't say it was in its infancy, but for your average fucking bod like me, it was, I don't know, it was like, might as well be reading Chinese. But the idea that you've got a guitar that can, you know, sound like different guitars, I have very strong opinions on that. I believe that guitars are not really where the sound's coming from. The sound is coming from your amplifier, most specifically the speakers. Now, you can have differences in pickups, yes, I do agree with that, but people talk about, you know, the wood making a difference and all that, and I just think, on electric instruments I'm talking about now specifically, and I probably have mentioned this before, when it comes to acoustic instruments, yes, the wood will make sound. So for example, drums and acoustic guitars, yes, if people say to me that, you know, for example, spruce will sound better on acoustic guitars and maple will sound a bit more punchier on drum kits, yeah, I'll take that on board, because it is an acoustic instrument. It's not, there's no electrical circuit in there. So when you look at bass guitars and lead guitars, electric lead guitars and bass guitars, I should say, it's a closed circuit basically. So what you've got, the pickup is a microphone, you've got the strings which are vibrating. The wood has absolutely no bearing on that whatsoever. And I say that with some confidence, and if you can prove me wrong, and the only way I will accept that you've proved me wrong is if you can produce frequency graphs that show the difference between the, you know, the wood. Now you get a lot of luthiers who produce these high-end guitars and say that, oh, the wood makes a difference. I would argue till I'm blue in the face with them that it doesn't. It will certainly make a difference to the aesthetics on the guitar. I'm never denying that, but as for making a difference to the sound on an electric guitar, I think you are talking bollocks. The Variax, getting back to the point, yeah, it seemed like a great idea when it first came out, but I quickly went off that idea when I remember thinking that it's too complicated for me. And we've got to remember, this was the sort of a 90s when it came out. And I just basically wanted to plug in, and I still do now as well. I just want to plug in and go, and that's it. I don't want to be fucking about with, you know, various setting controls. And getting back to line 6 as well, and I'm not really, and please don't take this wrong way, I'm not disrespecting your choice in what you've bought and all that, but I've never played for a decent line 6 amplifier. Their amplification is really poor in my opinion. The cabs, I played for a line 6 cab on its own, and it just sounded terrible. And you know, I could probably do a whole video. Well, I will do a whole video once. Here's another thing for you. I'm going off on a tangent here, but bear with me. I bought 2 lights to try and get the studio sorted out for doing videos in the studio, because, you know, this is getting wearing a little bit thin now. And I thought, well, I've got a studio out in the garden now. It's fully equipped, and I want to get that on the channel. And I bought these 2 lights, you know, to get the proper lighting on there, and the fucking thing's turned up from Amazon with 2 American plugs on it. And I just think, for fuck's sake, can you not even get that right? But rant over. There you go. But yeah, line 6, not really a fan of their stuff, to be honest. I've not really bought any of their stuff, but I've played through a lot of their stuff and have not been impressed. Do you remember when the Pod came out? Again, not impressed with that either. That soon died a death. So yeah, line 6, I'd avoid. There's much better stuff out there.
Got another question. Can you beer? Dude, I can always beer. If so, what are the requirements and how does it change the beer? Got a couple of Fuller's Vintage 2020 in the cupboard and wondering if I should lay one down for a few years.
Can I beer? Yeah, I can always beer, mate. Definitely. I think what you were trying to say was, can you mature beer? And there are certain beers you can, and there are certain beers you can't. Now, for example, bottle conditioned beers, yes, you can. You can leave that there. If they have live yeast in them, then they will mature in the bottle. How long you leave it for is entirely up to you. It won't go off, but it will taste different as the years go by. The Fuller's Vintage Ale is designed for that. Now, I've seen people reviewing stuff from the 90s, and I know people that have still got bottles of vintage ale from the 90s as well that haven't opened. I'm fucking terrible. I can't do it. I can't leave it on a shelf. I had a 2020 bottle, and that lasted 6 months. And it is the Fuller's Vintage Ale is an absolutely superb beer. The recipe changes every year, and it is well worth trying out their vintage ales if you can try it. It comes in a 330ml bottle, but the box is quite big, and you may think, oh, it's expensive and all that, but it is a beer not to be shared. It's a beer to be savoured. And I know people that have bought up quite a few of them, and you may think, oh, it's expensive for a 330ml bottle, but believe me, it is worth every penny. If you're a bit skint at the moment, and let's face it, we're not flush, then the Tint Meadow stuff is probably not as good as the vintage ale, depending on the year, but it is a good substitute in my opinion. And of course, I've done 2 videos on Tint Meadow, and it's one of my favourite English beers. I absolutely love it. But yes, you can, to answer your question, you can mature beer, but it has to be bottle conditioned beer. There's no point in getting, and I've got one here as well as an example of what you cannot mature in a bottle. That is a Courage Best Bitter, and that was sold to me out of date, and that dates back from the 31st of October 2021. I will probably open that when I'm out of my nut. I might even do a review of it, because I'm saying you can't mature it. It might actually taste better coming from Marston's. There might be a little bit of flavour. It might taste fucking rank. I should do that one day actually, that's a good point. But yeah, you've got to be careful. Bottle conditions you can, normal macro brewed beer you can't. In my opinion, that will be the tester. So there you go.
Hello, enjoying the spreading of knowledge about the beer, but knowing your Irish background, I wonder if yourself or any of your subscribers can answer me this. When I was a young lad, about 18 or 19, we got a week's casual work with a gang of old Irish guy. Looking back now, they were probably only in their late 30s. It was a red hot summer. Every evening we went back to the pub and drank pints of Harp lager, but through a Guinness head. I've never come across this again. Even my Irish pals have never heard of this. Please enlighten me if you can. Cheers. Sorry it was so long-winded.
That's a good question, and I think I answered it on the comments actually. It was called a Black and Tan, and it was not very popular over here. I do remember working on the sites in the late 80s and the early 90s, and I do remember particularly, and I was convinced, and I'm not 100% sure, but I was convinced that one day in 1989 I was working on a site in Hammersmith, and it was absolutely fucking sweltering, and it was a Saturday, and I do remember it got to over 100 degrees. We had a thermometer at the site agent's office, and that was reading 100 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I'm old school. I'm an old git, and it was absolutely fucking steaming hot. I mean, it really was. I mean, especially when you're working on site underneath a blazing sun, you're doing heavy manual labour, and beer did go down well. Now, some people might say that beer is probably not the best thing to drink in the warm weather. I would disagree. If you've never done a fucking hard day's graft in your life, then you probably would say that, but believe me, there is nothing more satisfying than finishing off a day on a site and coming home and, well, not even coming home, not even getting to the fucking station, just going straight in the pub and sinking a beer. Now, that is typical Irish, in my opinion, because obviously they were ardent Guinness drinkers all year round, as most, well, I wouldn't say all of them, but most Irish fellas were back then. I mean, Guinness, you was always guaranteed a good pint of Guinness back then if you knew where to go. And there were a lot of Irish pubs back then, and the Guinness would flow quite often. It would have been brewed in Park Royal, and it would have been quite fresh, certainly around London, and it would have been flowing quite a lot, so you would have got a decent brew. Now, as I say, previously on some of these comments, and even some of the comments on this video, I've said don't drink beer that isn't brewed in the original place. However, when you're talking about Ireland and the United Kingdom, the ingredients and the conditions, and even if it wasn't brewed in Ireland, the beer was very, very similar. And to testimony to that fact is there were a lot of Irish fellas who would go to certain pubs, and my old man especially, I mean, you know, if you want to argue this point, my old man used to say, there was a pub up the top of my road where I lived in Tottenham. It was a pub called Coach and Horses. If you're a Spurs fan, you know that it's a Spurs pub now, but that was when I was a kid, and I do remember going in there dressed as a skinhead. That didn't go down too well with a load of Irish geezers. Fucking kid. They were queuing up to fight me until they see who my old man was, and they was like, oh, he's with him, he's all right. But it was literally, they used to park their shovels and every equipment that they'd been working on the roads with in the corner, and there would be pints of Guinness on the bar, and they would be knocking that back. And I do remember my old man saying, this is as good as any Guinness you get back in Ireland. And you know, if there's any Irish viewers watching now who want to disagree with that, fucking take it up with a medium, because my old man's dead. But there you go. And yeah, I would say that from what you're describing to me, that beer was called a Black and Tan, and it was usually Harp Lager and Guinness, and the Guinness would stay at the top and the lager would sink to the bottom, and there was a way of pouring it. Now, to be honest, Guinness and lager, I'm really not into these sort of cocktail. Well, I'll say I'm not into the cocktail drinks. Light and lager, I did try that, and yeah, I mean, it's probably drinking with me rose tinted spectacles, because back then there used to be a lot of these blended beers. I mean, blended beers is a traditional English thing, and you know, obviously it caught on with the Irish with the Harp Lager, which is brewed by, or was brewed by Guinness. I'm not sure whether it's still available now. I think it is. But I think that the tradition of mixing certain beers, there were certain beers that worked, certain beers that didn't. For example, light ale, I think, did go with bitter, and I did think it went with lager. So light and bitter and light and lager, that's definitely a thing. I do like that. I've even had a review of it on the channel. I quite liked it. Certain other ones, bitter and brown ale, I think that's called a brown split. Yeah, not bad. That was okay. Snake bite, no fucking way. Not for me. I just thought it was the worst drink in the world. Even growing up, I didn't like snake bite. They used to pour a bit of blackcurrant in it. Oh, it was horrendous stuff. But to get back to your point, that beer was called a Black and Tan, and I don't think you'd get many Irish drinking that. I do remember, well, my old man drank Guinness all year round, regardless of the weather. It could be snowing outside, or it could be beating down. The sun could be beating down, and he'd be drinking Guinness. And it wasn't cold Guinness back then. It was room temperature Guinness. They didn't give a fuck. They just drank that, and that was what they did. But there you go. And that concludes another edition of Pints of View. There will be others, so please, please, please keep the comments coming. It's always appreciated, and I do, as I always say, I do read every comment. There is not a comment that gets past me that I don't read and take on board. I'm very slack on replying to them for various reasons. I've got a lot of things going on here at the moment, and reviewing the beer is a bit of an escape, bit of therapy for me. But if I don't get back to you, do not take it personally. You can rest assured that I have taken your comment on board, whatever you said. And if I don't reply, it's nothing personal. You may even see it on another edition of Pints of View. So please keep them coming. If you want to subscribe. If you don't, that's fine. I'm not doing this for subscribers. I'm not trying to make money out of this. I don't accept free beer. And the reason I don't accept free beer is because I want to give you honest opinions. I've actually turned down beer from a couple of breweries who I've given good reviews to, because I don't want to be in anyone's pocket. I don't want to feel obliged to give certain beers good reviews. If I start doing that, then I go down the route of some of these other reviewers who I think are just, I wouldn't say they're shills, paid shills, but I don't think they're being honest with you. And I will fucking tell you, believe me, if a beer is shit or if it's good, you will know about it. So there you go. And remember, beer is working class champagne.
What the fuck is going on? Hey? What's going on? Oh, you bastard.